Good morning, everyone. It is 11:30 a.m. on Tuesday, July 28th. I'm calling this called meeting of the Del Mar College Board of Regents to order. I'm going to call roll to establish a quorum. So wherever you are, I think we have everybody in the seat now. Dr. Babley.
Here.
Regent Loeb.
Here.
Regent Garza.
Here.
Dr. Adami.
Here.
Regent Averett. Here. Dr. Turner. Here. Oh, my goodness. Sorry. Regent Kelly.
Here.
Regent Cruel. Here. I'm Carol Scott. We have a quorum and can conduct business. Would you please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you very much. Dr. Turner, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please join us as we read our Del Mar College vision statement. Del Mar College empowers our communities to achieve their dreams. All right, we are streaming live audio and video from our Board of Regents meetings on the college's website in real time, with the exception of portions of the meeting is considered closed session by statute. We have an opportunity now for general public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment on an item not on our agenda today, now's the time. I don't see anyone. So we will move on to our only piece of business today. We have, this is our budget workshop where we hope to pull all the information together that we've been discussing over the past several meetings. And we are going to have Dr. Escamilla kind of kick that off as Dr. Napoles comes to the mic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. I have a few words that'll kick us off, and again, Dr. Napoles will be the conductor of the presentation for today. I want to begin by thanking staff, faculty, all members of the college community here at Del Mar College that got together to pull together these numbers to this point, because it's taken an awful lot of effort under some extraordinary sudden changes that I'll describe here in just a little bit. But again, members of the board, I want to thank you again for convening this budget workshop. As this has become customary at this late part of July. It is a special called meeting, and it is a very important meeting, although there will not be any formal action taken on the numbers that we will present today. This year's budget arrives at a particularly consequential time. Things changed suddenly for us due to some erroneous forecasting at the state level. And as a result, our overall budget that we were coming into and preparing for as late as the June board meeting was interrupted suddenly with us being notified by our state appropriations people at the coordinating board and at the LBB that there was a $3.5 million shortfall that has required administration to move quickly in identifying and offsetting these adjustments while still preserving the college's core commitments to students, faculty, staff, and of course the greater community. I do want to note that the state legislature and the coordinating board are expected to consider possible partial payback through supplemental appropriations discussions, which will be at the latter part of the legislative session. Yes, January begins the next legislative session for those who are anxiously awaiting that with me. Though we're budgeting conservatively today and will treat any such relief as an upside rather than a certainty, despite all that, what you'll see today reflects a conservative approach, a preliminary revenue expense to our budget, budget totaling $135 million, with combining that with the circumstances of a robust enrollment and a growing enrollment that is providing for scenarios that will absorb the vast majority of this operating budget as we move ahead this next academic year. Beyond the immediate budget numbers, today's presentation will walk through the assumptions driving our revenue outlook, tuition and fee rates, property tax projections, and methodology changes reshaping how the state calculates performance funding as a result of HB8. So it's going to get really, really tricky. Let's suffice it to say we are living in interesting times, ladies and gentlemen. Again, joining me today is the executive team, and as I said earlier, I want to thank every one of them for pulling together the presentation to this point. And without further ado from me, Dr. Napolis and Madam Chair, I defer to you.
Thank you, Chair Scott, members of the Board of Regents, and Dr. Escamilla. Very honored to conduct, as Dr. Escamilla mentioned, this presentation. They say the third time's the charm, and things go well with great feedback. And so it's really important for us to be with you today to talk about the planning that has already occurred, the planning that occurs every day throughout the year, and how because of really solid planning and a good team, we can pivot and adjust to what the external factors give us, and then we can plan accordingly. And so today is an opportunity for the entire board to see the proposals that we have, the preliminary budget, in preparation for your approval in the next month of August. So very, very excited to share with you what we have and some of the things that we continue to plan as we adjust and get to the day that we have the opportunity to vote officially on the budget. So with me are some of the people listed above, and we will be taking turns coming up. The majority of the speakers will include myself, Ms. Jackie Landrum, and Dr. Patricia back there, and then we'll be joined by other members of our team. If you go to the next slide, as you can see, the agenda where we talk about the calendar, we talk about the challenges and assumptions, we talk about the operating budget, the allocation, the expenses, and the capital projects. So we'll go into detail for each of these categories with the respective experts in the field. So before we do that, I just wanted to share with you the bigger picture of how we look at the budget and Del Mar College as the institution. So if you move to the next slide, you can see the strategic alignment with the mission of the college, our strategic plan, the initiatives that we'll discuss, the resource allocation, which is key to see where some of these itemized expenses will be, and review and recommendations. Next slide. From the left, our strategic plans with the power of verbs: communicate, elevate, cultivate. We collaborate across the college, connect beyond the college, increase completion for our students, maximize resources, nurture our faculty, and optimize the Viking student experience. And the next slide will show you some of the bigger categories for each of those items. So enhancing safety in terms of more cameras, the Viking Way, the expansion of that to include Viking services, the College Ready pipeline. When we talk about the summer bridge camps, we call them different categories, but making sure that we prepare the students at whatever, and we meet them at whatever math, reading, and writing levels that they are to be more successful when they enroll with us in our courses. And then, as you all have heard several months now, the conversations about the physical resources, and also some increases to the custodial cost as well. Next slide. And so I want to bring my colleague Jackie here to talk about the calendar and a few other slides.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, Board of Regents, Dr. Escamilla. So for our fiscal year 2027 budget calendar, July 31st, we will send out our preliminary budgets to our departments. On August 11th, we will come back and provide another update to the board where we will seek your permission to conduct our public hearing. On August 25th, we will hold our public hearing where we will seek your approval to adopt our fiscal year 2027 budget and our proposed tax rates. As a reminder, September 1st is our deadline to approve the budget, and September 30th is the deadline to approve our tax rate. So for our revenue challenges and assumptions, we have received our estimate from the Higher Education Board for our performance funding, and we've adjusted our appropriations to their estimate. There have been some changes with their methodology for calculating our performance funding and an overall decrease in the state's funding for all community colleges, which Dr. Napoles will discuss in the next slide. For our FAST appropriations, we are increasing our budget based on our historical data, which is relatively close to the coordinating board's estimate. For tuition and fees, we are not increasing our tuition and fees in order to comply with the governor's request to help ease the financial burden on our students and their families. We have analyzed our enrollment trends and are adjusting our tuition fees based on the available data. For our property tax rates, so this presentation has been updated based off of the latest information with our property taxes. So only the slides that have information on property taxes have been changed. We got those certified values over the weekend. The tax office and I and the appraisal district, we all worked very hard to get those calculations done yesterday. So for property tax revenue, we have evaluated our overall rate. Since we received those certified values, we are seeing a negative 0.68% in our net valuations, and we are seeing $535 million in our new constructions. So the decrease in our overall valuations is due to that House Bill 9, which took effect this year. And House Bill 9 provides an exemption for taxation on portion of the appraised value of business personal property. That threshold went from $2,500 to $125,000. So that was a huge impact on our property valuations. So even though our property values increased, this new threshold did decrease our overall property tax values. So now Dr. Napoles will go over our performance funding timeline.
As Dr. Escamilla alluded to at the beginning, we had some changes where we had to pivot in the last month and a half. And so after our last board meeting, which was on June 9th, we talked about the direction that we were going to. And then on July 14th, we received notification from the coordinating board that our budget for the performance funding was going to be reduced about $3.5 million. And so in preparation for the board review, recommendation, and approval, we met with our board agenda prep and talked about ways to make sure that we balance the budget and reduce in critical areas without decreasing the commitments we have for our students, faculty, and staff, and the growth that we see ourselves going to and that we've seen both in terms of enrollment and in the community. And so July 20th, you see there, the team met to review the updates, and then August 11th is the board approval. And so with Dr. Escamilla's permission, I'm going to go and share a little bit more about what he had said. So we were working on the plan, and the state's allocation for all the community colleges budget was less than what we needed because many of the community colleges outperformed what the projections were. And so that's a great thing for our students. That's a great thing for community colleges, except from the budget perspective. And so you have an amount that was projected versus the amount that was actually earned, and there was a reduction there. In addition to that, the state, through the coordinating board, is changing the percentages of specific metrics, which reduce some of the other funding. And in addition to that, they were going to reduce the community colleges by about 6.5%, and Del Mar College and a few other colleges experienced more growth there. And so it wasn't just a reduction based on a projection and more success, it was compounded factors. And then fourth, Del Mar College is one of the highest producers through the performance funding, and so we continue to notice more of the reduction with some of the changes than some of the other colleges, but many of the colleges, except for just under 10, I believe, faced a similar reduction. And then we'll go, Dr. Escamilla, did you want to?
I'd just like to add, I just got off the phone, Regents, with Dr. Natalie Chapa. She's at the legislature, at the Capitol as we speak, and she was sitting in a Senate Finance hearing, Senate Finance Committee hearing meeting today, just this morning, and all of this is being discussed. with the Senate Finance Committee. And I think they're in a break right now, they're in a break right now, and she's in Senator Hinojosa's office. She was just leaving Senator Hinojosa's office with some more specifics on what's going on. There's some very candid talk, according to Dr. Chapa. There are different expectations. I'm glad to say that there are Senators Chuy Hinojosa, and in this case, and Senator Lois Kolkhorst are adamantly in our favor, in our corner, and asking how and why did this happen, and those kinds of things, and what, more importantly, are they going to do, because neither TSTC nor the Lamar colleges were affected in this way. We're the only sector that was affected in this way. So that's the candid phone call that I had 2 minutes before Madam Chair gavelled us in this morning, and so more to come. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we have Dr. Patricia.
The proposed fiscal year 2027 performance funding methodology reduces the total state funding, as you can see there, by 6.5% and lowers the weighted assigned priority student groups. The proposal also restricts the number of outcomes that can be generated funding within a 5-year window. The combination of less funding available statewide, reduced emphasis on outcomes tied to priority student populations, and tighter funding eligibility may limit the future performance funding opportunities. Continued focus on student completion, transfer, and credential attainment remain critical. Continuing on, the funding methodology includes the elimination of third-party credentials as a fundable outcome and introduction of the credential of value requirement for associate degrees beginning with the second year implementation under the COV framework. Associate degree programs must demonstrate a positive 5-year return on investment and lead to annual earnings of at least $30,000 by the 5th year after completion. These changes signal a shift towards workforce and earnings-based funding measures. Institutional planning should focus on maximizing eligible outcomes, evaluating program viability, and assessing potential fiscal impact on non-funded credentials.
I have a question on that.
Yes, sir.
The 5-year return on investment, is that an average thing, or is that per person? Because we have some of our graduates who are going into industry who are making $100,000 plus a year, and so it would seem to me like there should be some kind of weighted average that goes into that calculation.
I'll take this one, if I may, Dr. Patricia. So, Regent Kroll, they're individualized according to specific areas. This is not across the board. They're selected programs that have been identified. I hate to mention it, but it's psychology as an example. There is an assumption that it is not a credential of value that has an ROI of 30K at the associate degree level, as an example, even though we know that it can and actually does, but it's built to transfer and so forth. So it's very individualized. The other thing, too, is this is kind of a throw it against the wall and see if it sticks kind of scenario, too, because the promise also from the coordinating board, and I apologize if you said this already, Patricia, is that there's going to be an annual reevaluation of this listing on a regular basis.
Okay.
So we have still hope that there'll be some reassessments done to minimize that list. The other thing I'd like to add, or you're going to the next list, I'm not going to stop anymore.
Also,
I hope that answers.
The 6 program areas that were identified as non-fundable, are any of those related to our degree programs?
Yes, that's the next slide.
Well, this
5 of
slide is the 6 associate degree programs identified as non-fundable for FY27. The exclusions represent about 16 associate degrees that we offer. like what Dr. Escamilla indicated, psychology, drama, biology. We have 16 of them. So as a result of that, Dr. Halcomb and others have worked with university partners to emphasize on the transfer initiative to try to offset the funding loss.
So that's what's critical. The amount of wraparound services that we've been building up and really emphasize. We will get reimbursement when they transfer, but they have to transfer for us to. And so that our transfer effort, we knew this coming in before they ever even. We knew transfer is always critical, and we'd already bolstered our efforts to do that. And so out of these 6 umbrella areas, 16 individual areas are affected, and you can bet that the team is working like never before. Like we are putting our hands on students' shoulders like never before to make sure that transfer is as robust as it's ever been here at the college. That's what we're going to have to do.
But some of these program areas, they're standalones for associate's degree. They don't really need a bachelor's to go out and work. So that's going to be the challenge, especially in culinary arts and so forth.
So we have another backstop opportunity that we have in addition to that is our BAS OML. To offer them to assist them to jump into that program as well, which is refundable as well, and it helps them. But at the end of the day, if they go through our program, and the other thing is that they have sub-awards within their umbrella terminal degrees, if you will, AAS and culinary arts and so forth, has various certificates and other things that there's also, that we are being reimbursed for. Mm-hmm. It's just the associate's degree. It makes no sense. Cosmetology is the other one, I think, as well. So those certifications along the way, we will receive partial funding. And again, I think there's research and data that we can do at the state level, and we're talking about it across the district to see if we can change it.
This is not a question related to the budget, but on this item, is the State Association working on any language to clarify legislatively that the tightening of all of these restrictions, do we see any hope at the end of this struggle?
My best answer to that, Madam Chair, is what I was alluding to earlier, is that the annual review process would be the opportunity for us to interface with the state on this particular issue. It has yet to be determined. I don't think a whole lot has been done in that area, but I do know it is part of the legislative agenda. And I will report back. You can bet I will.
Yeah, I would comment that I understand everybody overperformed. They set aside a certain amount of money. They've got to cut back. We need to go ask them to true it up. To me, the very difficult part of this, though, is the second aspect, which is the goalposts keep moving. You know, if it's, okay, we're 5% short because everybody overperformed by 5%, everybody's got to take a 5% haircut. I get that. But we're going to fund this and not fund that, or this is going to be this year and not that. I mean, it is impossible for us to strategically plan, and we're spending time and money trying to, still get, like, this is very management labor intensive, this part of it.
Yes. The irony of all of this and our saving grace is really the short-term certificates along the way, both for the individuals and for us, that we do recoup some. Again, it's a bigger, broader conversation that we hope to have, that we will have with the legislature. I say we being the 50 community colleges. Stay tuned. We need the session to happen to open this up. That and then the work going on with our local delegation, because they're not happy about this. They see this. They do not like it. Natalie is, like I said, as we speak, is working at the Capitol to make sure all these details are being conveyed.
Do we have any insight in how they chose which programs to defund and which ones they chose to accept? Because I'm looking at this list, And I'm seeing jobs that are very likely going to generate $30,000 a year that we're no longer going to be reimbursed for educating people to perform. Out in my district, agriculture, I got a lot of farmers out where I live, and I look at what they drive. I know they're making money.
So duly noted, sir. At $40 a haircut anymore, I mean, boys don't go to the old barber shops like we used to for $6 each anymore. And so hairstylists and all the other bodily needs that people go for, it's incredible the amount of money that people with those degrees and certificates have that they generate.
And we certainly need fewer trained journalists, right? It's like, yeah. Okay, thank you.
So to determine the potential impact of the state's methodology changes, we took a look at fiscal year 2024 and 2025 outcomes. So in fiscal year 2024, with the changes in the methodology, we could have potentially lost about $815,000. And as you can see, those associate degree exclusions are the largest piece of that at $472,000. For fiscal year 2025, with those changes, we could have potentially lost $630,000. And again, those associate degree exclusions make up the biggest piece of that. So for our fiscal year 2027 preliminary state appropriations, we've provided a breakdown of the adjustments from the coordinating board's estimate in 2026, which was $19.2 million. As Dr. Napoles explained earlier, with the overall state funding decrease for all community colleges at the 6.5% from fiscal year 2026, we have estimated that impact is about $2.5 million for Del Mar. And then we did an estimation on the methodology changes that we just went over. We are estimating a reduction of $504,000. And then with the methodology changes for those weight changes on those each academically or economically disadvantaged, we're estimating about $402,000 reduction. So with that, that brings us to our fiscal year total preliminary performance funding budget of $15.7 million.
Again, not related to what you're saying today. Mark, can you get me an estimate? I guess if everybody is 6.5% down, and then what are the associate degree and weight changes due to our 50 community college districts? I would like to know the overall statewide impact of the shave and the change in methodology.
Well, there's a shave and then there was a scalping.
Right.
So in two different categories,
Right.
so duly noted.
I'd like to know, because I think that is important for us to understand the statewide, certainly $3.5 million in our budget is a significant impact to our next year funding cycle, given the limitations of everything else that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But I think statewide, we need to know that number as well.
I have those, and we will get them shortly.
So state appropriations set the broader funding picture, but one of our most direct investments in our community, our taxpayers, and our student success is our Freedom to Dream program, which helps qualifying students complete their associate degree within a shorter 3-year time frame by committing to full-time attendance. So now that we have a full year of data, we can take a look and compare what we're actually seeing compared to what we forecasted. So we forecasted that we would enroll 1,715 students. What we actually enrolled was 1,684 students. For tuition and fees, we forecasted that we were going to waive $5.1 million in tuition and fees for those students, and we actually waived $4.6 million. We are seeing a $1.7 million decrease in our tuition and fee collection, and we think that's the shift from students that were currently Del Mar students that shifted over into the Freedom to Dream program. And if you remember last year when we were talking about budget, we did analyze the data at that time on those students that were coming into the program, and we were seeing new enrollment. We weren't seeing a lot of students that were current. However, at that time, the enrollment was still going and the approval process had not been finalized. On our performance funding, we had forecasted 382 credentials would be awarded in year one. What we're estimating now is that 96 credentials are going to be awarded. So a key finding from the first cohort is that 44.7% of the students that came into cohort 1 needed developmental education courses, so that shifted that timeline of completion. As a result, the forecasted performance funding for the first year was $1.6 million, and what we're actually estimating is it's going to be more around $273,000. So with the Del Mar College Foundation contribution of the $500,000, we had forecasted that we would see a return of $2.1 million in funding, when we're actually seeing an investment into our students of $959,000. So for our expenses, we originally estimated $25,000, assuming that existing capacity would be absorbed by our existing faculty members when these students came in. So with a year of data now, we're seeing that higher overload in faculty cost, and we're now estimating that expenses are going to be more like $1.6 million. So altogether, our forecast was that we would see a return of $2.1 million, and what we're seeing is that we're investing $2.5 million into that first year for this cohort. So now Dr. Patricia is going to discuss our success and persistence strategies.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
I know we had dual credit transfers. Like we had people who came in with 15 hours. How did we not get paid for any of them?
You're talking about the early completers?
It wasn't dual credit transfer. When they graduate high school and they come here with 15 hours, we get a completion, right? And so
Depends if they come in, they have to complete it afterwards. Patricia, explain the difference.
The 15 semester credit hours while they're dual credit students. And then if they stay here and earn another 15 and they transfer, we get the transfer money.
But we don't get it when they,
We get the $3,500 when they reach the 15 semester credit hour threshold as their dual credit students.
Okay, but how did we not have any? This is saying we didn't have any, but I know we had some. Or did we not count it here? So the forecast has 165 of them, and I know we had a fair number of them.
What is the explanation of that dash? Hold on, let the teams are, because we obviously had them.
Right.
And what does that dash represent? So, let's see if we can get some actuals. Let's see if we can fill in that blank. Let's just hold that question for right now.
Cool.
And then we'll come back in and see what that dash represents. Oh, sure. They're there. We'll have to check our forecast models.
This is why we
Yes.
workshop. We can continue to workshop these numbers.
Yes, ma'am.
Work.
The other thing too is that we know that we've been steadily experiencing full graduates of associate's degrees along the way as well, and so we've got some early ones and we've got some couple of little updates on that. I think this summer we have
3 Freedom to Dream students graduating with associate degrees, 2 liberal arts, 1 air conditioning.
But
Associate Applied
does
Science.
that settle for the summer?
That's for summer out of the 652.
Okay, out of that. Okay, so they're starting to trickle in and so forth, but early on. So we'll keep going. So we'll get that information on that, what that dash represents.
On success and persistence, the college continues to strengthen student success and completion through proactive support services, targeted intervention strategies. Key initiatives include, of course, success coaching, strong student-faculty engagement, academic persistence planning, and care referrals, and connect students with resources needed. The student enrollment intensity remains a key indicator predictor of success. Full-time students persist at significantly higher rates, 82% from fall to spring, and typically complete within 2 to 3 years, generating performance funding outcomes more quickly. In contrast, part-time students persist at lower rates, 40 to 45%, and often require 6 or more years to complete. These findings reinforce the importance of strategies that encourage full-time enrollment, strengthen early persistence, support timely completion to improve student success.
Patricia, hold on to that slide. Regents, this is one of my, I don't want to say favorite because it's kind of a painful reality, but this is the business model right here for Freedom to Dream. And this describes, even beyond that, all of our students in one way or another, whether they're Freedom to Dream or not. I looked up some data over the weekend about the cost of living of the average student living here in Corpus Christi, and just what it costs to live as a student that's enrolled or as a young adult that's enrolled, or not enrolled rather. But it's about $20,000. It's like $17,000 to $20,000 just to live, just to survive every year. And so when you start projecting out the cost of living over 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you know, that number right there and the impact on the individual's lives is tremendous. And then there's multiples in the house and this and that. I mean, you know, all of us who have families know that. And there are those students, you know, with housing insecurities, food insecurities, all these other things, and this weightedness, this stretching out of this life and this expense on their lives. You know, no wonder so many of them give up. You know, it's hard. It's just, but this right here, we're going to elaborate on this with some of the data that I picked up over the weekend. It's an important tale of the tale. Thank you,
Mark. Yes. So I think what I'm hearing you say is that we've got data saying that our typical student requires $20,000 a year just to exist.
Yes.
I guess that's before they pay us.
That's before any costs associated with that's just to survive and
i.e. the target for Freedom to Dream.
Yes, sir.
And do we have any data on what our average student makes, earns in their part-time jobs, or do we know where their money's coming from to meet that $20,000?
That'd be an augment of what I was talking about, and so we'll dive further into that one.
I mean, is that data that we're entitled to, or is that?
Yeah, there's work. You know, Texas Workforce Commission has all kinds of things, and this is the one that points out one of the most troubling statistics of the 38% of students leaving high school for whatever reason, graduating or dropping out or whatever, and doing nothing and generating nothing for the first 5 years out of high school. So they're costing somebody $17,000, $18,000, $19,000, $20,000 a year.
Someone's feeding them, right?
Somebody's got to be, and yes. So we have those data sets, and we're making notes for that. So we'll bring that back.
All right, thank you, Mark.
Full-time, first time in college, student persistence remains strong, particularly during the critical first year. Fall to spring persistence increased 86% in 24-25, demonstrating early engagement and student support service efforts. Fall to fall persistence also improved significantly, 68.5%, reflecting gains in year-over-year retention. These results indicate the institutional strategy focused on full-time student success are contributing to a stronger persistence, along with our messaging of start, stay, and finish strong interventions. Freedom to Dream Cohort 1, the inaugural Freedom to Dream, is demonstrating strong early persistence with 81.5% students returning fall 25 to spring 26. Preliminary fall 26 data shows 46% persistence, with enrollment still in progress and some students having already completed their educational goals. The early outcomes indicate that Freedom to Dream initiative is positively supporting student retention, improving student success, and future completion outcomes.
So on this slide, when you update it, you'll note which ones completed versus the fall of 25 to fall of 26,
Yes, ma'am.
correct? Yeah, because we don't want that persistence number to look bad because they finished.
Yeah, so if they didn't return because they graduated, they don't count as a persistent, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah, so
They
need another
will
column.
be counted in our graduation rates
Right.
and transfer rates.
Accounted in this data, so it doesn't count against us.
Right. Full-time student persistence continues to improve across all major measures. Fall-to-fall persistence increased 55.9%. Spring-to-spring persistence rose to 52.7%, and fall-spring persistence reached 79.3% in the most recent cohort. Part-time persistence continues to show steady improvement across all measured intervals. Fall-to-fall persistence increased 44.2 to 50.9%, while spring-to-spring persistence rose 45%. The fall-to-spring persistence also improved to 65.5%, reflecting strong student retention and engagement. And now I'll turn it over to Jackie.
Okay. So at the December board meeting, Regent Loeb raised several important questions regarding how we evaluate the Freedom to Dream initiative. In response, this report builds upon the prior investment report by incorporating an incremental financial framework that evaluates environmental growth, utilization of existing capacity, and long-term sustainability. He also noted that much of our growth being realized today is occurring within existing resources. Students are often filling available seats in existing classes, enabling the institution to increase enrollment and generate additional state funding without a corresponding increase in faculty staffing or operating costs during the program's initial phase. Regent Loeb also emphasized the importance of carefully modeling future growth and environment and as enrollment expands beyond current capacity, additional costs will emerge and such be reflected in future projections. In addition, he encouraged us to continue to monitor state funding assumptions and ensuring that our analysis remains aligned with actual student behavior and outcomes. Most importantly, we now have preliminary indicator results that provide an initial measure of the initiative's performance. While the program remains in early stages and additional data will be needed over time, these results offer valuable insight into its impact, sustainability, and contribution to student success. The district's leadership continues to use these findings to guide operational enhancements, strengthen implementation, and support continuous improvements. Jackie will now take a deeper dive into these numbers.
Thank you. So for the Freedom to Dream forecast, we've provided the actuals for this year, along with a 3-year forecast for fiscal years 2027 through 2029. So we are forecasting 1,498 students to come into the program in fiscal year 2027. As students progress through the program and earn their credentials, we are anticipating enrollment to decline in subsequent years at 1,101 in fiscal year 2028 and 323 in fiscal year 2029. So for tuition and fees for fiscal year 27, we're estimating waiving $4.2 million in tuition and fees. In fiscal year 28, it's $3.1, and fiscal year 29 is $923,000. For the number of credentials awarded, we're forecasting 397 for fiscal year 27. And then 951 for fiscal year 2028, and as those students complete, we're forecasting 323 for fiscal year 2029. For performance funding, we are forecasting $2.8 million in fiscal year 27, $4.1 million in fiscal year 28, and $1.4 million in fiscal year 29. So with the $500,000 contribution from the DMC Foundation, that brings our total funding of $3.3 million in fiscal year '27, $4.1 in fiscal year '28, and then $1.4 in fiscal year 2029. On the expense side, now that we have a year of actual data, we are estimating $1.4 million in fiscal year 2027, $1.1 million in fiscal year 2028, and $647,000 in fiscal year 2029. So although we are seeing a net investment in Freedom to Dream of $2.5 million this year, we forecast the program will generate a return of $1.8 million in fiscal year 2027, $3 million in fiscal year 2028, $794,000 in fiscal year 2029, bringing our total to $3.1 million over the 4-year period. So now Dr. Napoles will...
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
So this forecasting does not include the potential of a Freedom to Dream 3.
That's exactly right.
Correct.
That's exactly right. You see this and coming down. And what the other assumption is that we have no permission for 3.0. We need permission from you all to move ahead. So this just assumes the current scenario. So there's a ramp up of graduates coming, of current 1.0 and 2.0 students, and then they're just by way of just analysis right now without permission, it comes down just naturally. 3.0.
So is there any thoughts on the staff's perspective of 3.0?
We're coming back in the fall. Yes, absolutely. For all considerations and all the things, all the data we have, we'll have a full year's worth of data.
Should that not be part of the budget discussion?
So that'll be the subsequent budget as we move ahead. It'll be for budget 27-28.
Okay.
And moving forth. So yes, it'll be where the overlap of the two, but in terms of actual dollars and so forth, it'll be next year's budget,
Okay.
the next year's budget.
All right.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate those questions, Regent Loeb, and one reason why I think it's important for us to see the beginning of this financial impact analysis. Sorry, Regent Cruel, I'm so sorry. You do, you absolutely do. I apologize. But I think it's important for us to get used to seeing this kind of funding forecast report, and I think it's going to help staff know what we want to see in terms of Freedom to Dream standalone, and then we see it folded into the budget. But this, I think, is going to be really helpful as we begin to have those discussions about whether or not we can continue this pilot program in some sort of phased-in approach or something. Yes. Regent Loeb, now you have your light on.
I was just going to make the comment, I think we keep kind of counting tuition as a loss on these, and while I understand it, I think we're assuming that, one, if we didn't have the program, that they would show up, and I think the fact that we had a significant jump in enrollment when that happened shows that that's not true. And to me, I think they are paying for it. They are paying property taxes for it. Mm-hmm. This program is only available to people who are paying our property tax rate. And so I just have a little bit of an ideological problem with logging them not paying tuition in the standard way of writing us a check as, they're not paying for it, or they're not paying tuition, or that's a revenue loss. I think we have the revenue gain from the fact that they chose to live in the district and pay property taxes. So I just want to make that comment and hope you guys can kind of think about how to display that sort of information in that context. So.
Okay. All right, so Dr. Napoles will now discuss the Aransas County Workforce Development Center.
Thank you. And to your comment, Regent Kroll, and to your statement and update, Chair Scott, what this slide, what the previous slide, and what the next slide will discuss are multi-year projects. And so what we can do is highlight how we are committing our funds for multiple years, for some that start off as initiatives, but also things that we become financial commitment for more than multi-years. And so with that, this was shown last month to the board, and what we wanted to highlight was the fact that, one, the building will be in the substantial completion state by September 15th, and that we've already started working with some of the community members, the ISD there, to offer some non-credit workforce classes, and that there are three approaches that we're taking. That we're offering the partnership dual credit CE, then we will have more continuing education courses offered in September, followed up with credit courses for second 8-week. And so as you see year 1, year 2 to year 5, we project that we will be making a revenue on the bottom where it says revenue over under. The first year we project to be $140,000 in the plus, and what we want to do and plan to do is pay ourselves back to fund the center that is and will be opened in September. And so the community is very excited about it, and the students have now a better opportunity. For those that used to drive over to our other locations, it gives them, for the classes that they have options to attend, a closer location. It also will entice other people to think about having an opportunity to earn a certificate, to earn an associate's degree, or take some additional classes. And above all, we're working with the community to make sure that we're providing educational options to more people. So that's very exciting.
I can't remember exactly how we funded the remodel of the building over there, but is some of that revenue going to go back into?
That's what Dr. Napolis is referring to. All the revenue for the initial investment that the college has will be reimbursed and put in an account, and we'll be accounting for it and reporting back to you all as it develops. The important piece right now is the work that Ms. Lenora Keys continues to help us with, and that is the political aspect of all the things that are going out there, all the interactions with the leadership out there. She continues to help us, assist us with all the momentum that's been developed over the past few years. And so all of that awareness is really taking place, and there's monies there's plans for more monies being raised to go towards this effort. There's fundraisers coming. There's a lot of positive excitement in the air and so forth. And then practically speaking, from the high schools, starting with the high schools, there's already programming going on as the team is reporting. And so the energy's there, the momentum's there, and we're looking forward to, as we always do, we give it a full head of steam when we go into these projects.
Annex them into our district. Annex them into our district.
Duly noted, sir.
With this slide, there's some capital projects for FY27 that were identified that we could invest in from existing funds. So we have the Oso Creek Affluent Water Project, the General Purpose Demolition, which that building is located on Windward Campus, Windward Water Well, upgrade fire and security camera systems. This is multiple, various on different campuses, not just one. And then also on Windward, the CDO program expansion, which we would be doubling the size of the existing training pad for our truck driving program. And Dr. West has identified existing funds, sources for the investment, and estimated operating surplus for 26 will be $3 million. Plant funds not designated, $3 million, and then our risk reserve has $8.6 million, which is a total of $14.6. And then the identified projects is $10.5 million.
Again, Regents, these are existing funds. It's not technically part of the budget, but it's going to be a part of the budget. It'll overlay into the budget cycle as a separate pot of funds. But we wanted to bring this back to you all because this has been the college's effort of putting money aside. And right now, with interest rates the way they are and so forth, we're going to talk about some other types of funding for some other projects. This is something that we can pay cash for and secure, hopefully, some solid pricing on requests for proposals and so forth. And on the ongoing basis of water replenishment, the way we probably should have, would have, could have, should have been living for a long time here, but the time is in front of us to start doing even more than we're doing with water conservation and utility conservation.
Does the CDL expansion include rolling stock? I mean, additional vehicles?
Oh, the CDL, no.
Right now, it does not. They do have quite a few trucks. We just don't have a lot of extra space.
Okay.
It's concrete.
Yes, it's concrete.
It's concrete is what that is.
Basically a parking lot.
Yes, it's a big, the expansion for that is a bigger footprint.
Parking lot and a space for them to maneuver and so on.
To operate and test and do off-road kinds of, well, not off-road.
Backup and
Yes.
docks and so on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Currently, they have 200 by 320 square feet, and basically we'd be doubling that at another pad.
Thank you.
concrete
That's
pad
what-
for 200 by 300 square feet, yes.
Y'all have seen these next 3 slides before. This slide illustrates our fall academic headcount trends over the past 6 years. After experiencing declines between fall 2020 and fall 2023, the college has rebounded with strong enrollment growth in the fall 24 and fall 25. Notably, fall 25 reached a total headcount of 12,098 students, representing a 14.6% increase over the previous year. This data reflects the targeted initiatives such as the Freedom to Dream and dual credit contribute significantly to the enrollment growth and expansion of student access. And I have my colleague here, Dr. Rivera, to speak to the dual credit numbers.
Yes, Regents, we have continued growth in our dual credit programs. In fact, this coming fall, we're adding about 3 new districts, Severnville, Bruni, and then in the spring, Raymondville has reached out to us to have us provide them dual credit opportunities. And not to include that, we have Orange Grove ISD that is coming online this fall with welding and other academic programs, as well as San Diego also doing welding programs. So we have a robust number of new enrollments that will be coming in, and the numbers that we will see here in the future will be very robust, in my opinion.
Leonard, how many school districts are we talking about?
Right now, we have 56 school districts, not including Raymondville, so it's probably like about 57 at this point. So
Yes,
we
but
continue to grow that footprint. quite a bit.
We were talking about 51 the other day, and so.
Yes, it's grown over the summer. We got about 4 or 5 requests from school districts reaching out to us, asking us to deliver programs to their students.
Bruni, Texas. Hello to Bruni, Texas.
Right on the side of Heavenville.
And you're talking about Raymondville as in the valley?
Yes.
Raymondville?
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Raymondville.
Do we have any other presence in the valley? Yeah.
No,
Or
that's the deepest south that we would have is Raymondville.
Bruni might be.
That's going to happen.
Bruni might be as far south, maybe, but we're getting really far out
Yeah,
there.
and they're reaching out to us, so just want to make it clear, we're not reaching out to
Always.
them. They reach out to
Wow.
us. They hear about the great things we're doing, and they hear it through their own network, and so they want to see, hey, can I become part of the Del Mar dual enrollment programs?
And so we're looking forward to all them, the superintendents and administrators and faculty coming to our superintendent symposium this
That's
fall.
going to be November 17th here at the Trust Grace Oso Creek campus. So
Yeah,
stay
good
tuned for more details.
Good opportunity for everyone to kind of go and welcome our friends from 57 school districts
Yes.
so far.
Can we get a listing or a map showing the?
Sure,
showing
we could
these?
get that developed, yes. Yeah, we could get that. That'd be great to have a graphic about that. We could
We
do
can
that.
tell you, we can show you the demographics as well as the geographics and so forth. So we got a bunch of different data we can put together for them.
Thank you.
How many high schools is that?
Well, out of the 57 districts, there's multiples, and they're like
Well,
CCISD.
CCISD has multiple schools, so actually it's more than probably 60 individual high schools that we're serving. Districts, it's about 57, as I mentioned, but high schools, it's probably near 60 plus.
62 or 63.
60 plus, yeah.
65 out.
Yeah.
Wow, I mean, I remember with when I mean, it was a couple years ago with our campuses, we were in the low 50s total campuses. So, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
The spring academic credit headcount illustrates here trends at the spring 21 to spring 26. The following enrollment challenges experienced Following the enrollment challenges experienced after the pandemic, the college has demonstrated a steady recovery and renewed growth over the past several terms. After reaching a low of 9,374 students in spring '23, enrollment has steadily reached to 10,185 in the spring '25, and for spring '26, we reached 2,052 students, representing a 10.5% increase over the previous year. This chart highlights the positive impact of the strategic enrollment efforts. Our regular spring enrollment remains strong. And finally, this slide highlights the college's total annual contact hours for both credit and continuing education courses over the past 5 academic years. Contact hours are an important measure because they reflect the overall level of student instruction and engagement across the institution. As you can see, we have seen a strong recovery and growth in instructional activity in 24-25. Total contact hours increased more than 5.3 million, representing a 9.9% increase over the previous year. This is the highest level, representing a 9.9% increase over the previous year, reflecting on this chart during the 5-year period. Continuing education hours also experienced a significant growth, rising more than 978,000 hours, reflecting increased demand for workforce development, increased industrial training, and community education programs.
This has got to be close to a high water mark for our contact hours. Do you know what our highest, I need to go back and look in the statistical report. What's our highest contact hours in the last 20, 25 years?
I've actually looked at that, and I think we're comparable. I don't know that we've surpassed, but it is certainly
We've got to be pretty darn close, because 5.2 million contact hours.
Yeah, I think we are very close to the highest, but somewhere around mid-2015 or 16, that's around where we probably were a little higher than what we are right now.
Yeah, there was one back in 15, 14, somewhere around there. That's my initial reaction. So if you can do a little research, Sushil, and send that to us, and we appreciate that. We'll put it in the hopper.
Thank you. I'll turn it over back to Jackie.
Thank you. So as you saw in the enrollment slides, our enrollment has been increasing over the last few years. So with that, we are forecasting a conservative increase for new enrollment growth of 311,000. With the opening of the Aransas County Workforce Development Center, we are projecting the 522,000, which was included in that projection that Dr. Napoles talked about. And with the contribution from our DMC Foundation, that brings our subtotal to the 1.3 million. So with the 1.7 million that we discussed on the reduction for our traditional students that shifted to Freedom to Dream in Cohort 1, and then the 1.9 investment into our Freedom to Dream students, our total preliminary estimated tuition and fee budget, we're going to reduce that by 400,000 for fiscal year 27. So now we're going to shift our focus to taxable property values. So for taxable property values, the district has shown growth over the past several years, rising from 26.3 billion in 2019 to 37.4 billion in 2023. Of course, that's that year that our industrial partners saw those huge increases in their valuations. So then in tax year 2024, this is by tax year. Tax year 2024, we saw a decrease of 4%, and that was those settlements with our industrial partners on those values from 2023. For tax year 2025, we saw 0% growth at 35.8 billion, and then with the certified values that we just received, we are at 35.6 billion, which is actually a negative 0.68% due to that House Bill 8. And just as a reminder, these percentages that are on this slide, this is the percentage after factoring in our TIFs, our ceilings. It's the value that we use to calculate our levy. I would like to say, A huge thank you to Ms. Maureen and her team at the appraisal district. They worked very hard this year trying to capture as much value as possible because they knew the impact of House Bill 8 was coming. And it's evident in the numbers. So last year at certification, there was $1.6 billion that was under ARB review, and this year there's $879 million. So very, very evident in the numbers that they worked very hard to capture as much value as possible. So for our tax rate history, our total tax rate has increased from .266104 in fiscal year 2023 to .275903 in fiscal year 2026, and we are currently estimating an overall flat, no change in our total tax rate. With some of the debts rolling off, refunding our existing bonds, and then take into account the excess debt collections that we've been receiving, we are estimating a debt rate of .04147. And then with the M&O, with our final values, we're estimating the M&O rate to be .234433, keeping our overall tax rate flat. So for a homeowner with an average homestead value of $265,490, they could potentially see an increase from last year's tax rate or property taxes of $717 to $732, which is a $15 increase. So for our preliminary revenue, what we've done on this slide is we provided you that preliminary budget column in the middle. That's where we were at in June. And then we did an adjustment column so you can see what's changed since our June meeting. So for our performance funding, we've included that decline of the $3.4 million due to the methodology changes and the state's overall reduction in funding for all community colleges. That brings our performance-based funding budget down to $15.7 million, which is an 18% decrease. For fast appropriations, we are increasing by $284,000, bringing our budget up to $2 million. Our insurance contribution is increasing by $393,000, and that's due to that 8% increase in our health insurance premiums. So that brings our total state funding to $25 million, which is 10% less compared to last year. For tuition and fees, we are reducing by that $400,000 that we talked about on the tuition fee activity slide, bringing our tuition and fee budget down to 21.9, which is a 2% decrease from last year. For our property taxes, we are increasing by the $5 million, bringing it up to $86.3 million, which is a 6% increase. And then for miscellaneous, we're increasing by $500,000, and that's due to projected increased investment income, bringing that budget up to 2.6. So that brings our total preliminary revenue budget for fiscal year 27 to $136 million, which is a 2% increase.
Can you explain the property taxes if the valuations went down 0.68% from last year? How are we getting $5.8 million additional money?
That's the reduction in our debt rate. So our debt requirement dropped from $20 million.
So this is just the operating budget. It's not the M&O budget. I mean, it's not the debt budget.
Right. We'll have the debt budget included in the next meeting. That's usually when we do it. But our debt requirement decreased from, I think, $20 million to $16. And then we collected $2.3 million in excess debt collections.
So more of the property taxes are going to the M&O budget versus the debt budget?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Because I had a hard time because you had said earlier there was $535 million in new construction.
Correct.
That only generates about $1.5 million in taxes if you don't include any exemptions.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It's because of that decrease in the debt rate that we're able to shift over to the M&O.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So now Dr. Napoles will discuss scenarios to balance due to the state decrease.
As Dr. Napoles comes up, I have a little course correction, a little fact check that came my way from earlier. We're talking about summer graduates, Regent Loeb, and so forth. Currently, I wanted to add to this that Patricia just sent over the updated after we clarified questions. There are 55 Freedom to Dream students prepared to graduate and complete at some level this summer out of 523 students with a total of 652 prospective awards for this summer. That's a big deal. So those are the numbers we were fishing for. Am I accurate?
Yes, sir. Just for the Freedom to Dream number out of the summer graduate number, if those numbers hold true and students pass and we get to confer all of them, that will represent about approximately $230K in reimbursement revenue.
So
How many of those are dual credit students?
We're going to find out.
We'll find out.
I'm assuming it's probably a big chunk that came through.
It's going to be interesting to parse all those out as they come. We're going to wait for those to certify, but those are the prospects that are coming up as a result of the staff reaching out to them, and so we're starting to see more than a trickle already this summer. Thank you for that, Dr. Patricia.
How many did we have last summer?
Well, 0 Freedom to Dream.
No, I mean.
In terms of for the 652 awards and the 523, Patricia, you just sent me that number.
I just have total awards. I don't have the head count. But last year, summer 2 was 399
Yep.
that we awarded. And the previous year, 330, the previous year, 321, the previous year, 393, and the previous year, 388. So this year.
Like at least a 50%.
78%
okay.
increase
Wow.
if all 652
On awards.
confirm. Their
big
perspective. It's preliminary.
We're gonna wrap that up at in certified enrollments and bring that back to you every time we can between now and September.
Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry, I have one more question. How long does it take to get reimbursed from the time of graduation?
Forever.
Okay, so there's...
No, so we have a whole schedule. We have a whole schedule of reimbursement. And Jackie, can you step up and talk about the schedule of reimbursement for those? It comes next year. It comes in segments. The good news is it doesn't come biennially like it used to. But it'll come in various buckets at various times every 6 months. Can you describe it a little bit better than I did, a lot better than I did, preferably, Jackie?
Yeah, so they have their estimate. They break that up into 3 payments throughout the year. It's usually about a year later that they get the data for the prior year. So we get what they call there's a dynamic adjustment payment in like February, but then the true-up payment doesn't happen until later on where they true up. So it's about a year delay.
Yep. And in 6-month segments, they're chopping it up and so forth, so.
Because they're also doing the dual credit, they're putting all the certificates.
Yes, ma'am.
They're doing everything in bundles, so I'm assuming that it'll probably be.
Yeah, pardon my facetiousness, I
When you're out,
apologize.
that's not bad.
It really isn't, and as opposed to the old biennial reimbursement process, and that was painful.
Regarding the question regarding the M&O, the last 2 slides of this presentation will go into more detail about the M&O forecast, and Dr. West will present on that. And so I have an opportunity to talk about the $3.4 million that was reduced from the budget after the last June meeting. And so we came up with 4 options, and we wanted to make sure that we balance the budget without interfering with a lot of the services and definitely the momentum that we have going with the success metrics, with the growth that we've shown and discussed through the presentation. So we have 4 different options. None of them have been selected, but we're working with the development of the budget using scenario number 1. And so scenario number 1 is the one that has the less immediate impact to faculty, staff, and services. And the 2 big items included in scenario 1 include $650,000 related to equipment budget, and then also $2.3 million in the reduction of maintenance tax notes. So we had talked about going from an $80 million project to a $43.8 million project, which would reduce the cost to us about $2.3 million. Scenario 2 and 3 also include removing some of the equipment, but scenarios 2, 3, and 4, as you can see, include slowing down or delaying the strategic hires for later in the fiscal and academic year. And in addition to that, scenario 2 looks at and touches the contingency at just under $1 million, scenario 3, $1 million, and then scenario 4, $2 million. So what you see is a spectrum, a continuum of what we can do to balance the budget, and we want to and can balance the budget without necessarily requesting any changes to the contingency or touching the contingency. As I've heard and learned while I became a Viking, this is not a yes or no to the maintenance tax note. It's a whoa from the 80 million to the 43 million. So that way we can still move forward with some of the projects, as you saw Tammy mention, some of the ones that we can self-fund already, but it also allows us to balance the budget until we get that, as Dr. Turner asked, whenever that schedule comes where we get reimbursed for the things that we've earned that the state can't provide. Smile. And so, as you can see here, once again, the scenario 1 has the less impact to students and people immediately, and scenario 4 touches more onto the contingency, and then also $1 million in delayed hires for the strategic positions.
So as you said, Dr. Napoles, is that maintenance tax opportunity, taking half of it and moving forward with the sickest of the buildings that need the most immediate. We can still come back with the second half of that next year. We'll still have we'll have the capacity next year, we strongly believe, and we'll kind of separate those two in two parts so we don't lose the time, lose the effort, and the momentum of the most urgent needs. So there'll be a consideration, and we'll talk about it more, elaborate more at the next, as we move on, as we move forward to approving, ultimately for consideration of approval of the final budget, about the second half of that story for next year. So there's more to come on that. We'll have a report from John and Tammy. If you don't, are you going to talk about that right now? You weren't planning, it's not in the presentation. Yes, we'll come back and talk about the second half of that. That's how we make things work. That's how we stretch things. We put a whoa on the 80 million. We take half of it, move that forward. We have the capacity for both, but we said no. We're out of an abundance of caution and being more conservative, we're only taking half as proposed for this particular budget. You've got a look on your face, Regent Kelly. I want to answer your
Well, I'm looking at 2.3 million and what will essentially be deferred maintenance. And I'm wondering what projects we're putting a whoa on. I'm aware this is often how other boards and councils end up in trouble and have to scramble to figure out a way to cover replacement costs as opposed to maintenance costs.
Yes. So the actual projects would be the ones that are most urgent. The ones that won't be included in this particular round proposal are the renovations of existing buildings that are fine the way they are right now, such as the Harbin Center. It's still operating. It's old. Mm-hmm. It needs a big hug, but it doesn't have any catastrophic kinds of scenarios or anything.
Mm-hmm. So,
right. But if I may, let me just add this. But such as the Child Care Center and the Black Box Theater in the Fine and Performing Arts, those buildings need the most urgent care, and we're going to delineate all of that for us, for you all, at the next two meetings leading up to the final summation of the proposal.
All right.
Just provide us a list of.
They'll be complete projects. They won't be partial projects.
Provide us a list of the projects that were included in the 80 million, and then which ones are included in this.
Yes.
I have a concern, I guess, about removing the equipment budget. What is included in the equipment budget?
So every year we've been putting that in our budget. What gets approved for those funds is determined after we have it in our budget. So it's not tied to anything specific. It's reviewed every year depending on what's a priority.
What types of, in the past, what?
So like the welding booth machines or mannequins for our nursing, simulators, things like that instructional equipment that our departments need.
So that's could potentially impact our ability to deliver?
For 1 year. So our plan is to put that back in the budget next year. We have purchased quite a bit of instructional equipment the last couple of years, so it's just for 1 year, and then we'll put that back in the budget next year.
This is a good time to remind everybody again, the supplemental appropriations is not a promise.
Right.
Other than that there will be a discussion at that point in the legislature next year at about the part of early summer between May and early July. There will be some discussions. Well, sure, I'll drive the bus. We can all go. So there will be at that point a discussions about reimbursement and some reconciliation of the errors that were made. No promises. We remain cautiously skeptical / optimistic because we have to look at all aspects, but that is one place where we can move forward and replenish these types of one-time costs. That's what we'll do.
I have one more question. Excuse my ignorance, but what is Ellucian subscription prepayment?
So Ellucian is our ERP system that we use for all of our financial information, our accounts payable. It is our, the enterprise resource planning, yes.
Yeah, it's the electronic backbone of the college.
Okay.
Dr. Escamilla, I appreciate your comments and I appreciate all the work done for the different scenarios because I would just encourage us, whichever one you all bring forward as the recommendation, that we don't count on anything from the state. That $3.5 million, we may never be made whole. So whatever way we choose to make up for that, let's make it the least difficult for us should we never get that money.
Yes, ma'am. So that 650, if anything is replenished, we will still move forward with whatever equipment. We have contingencies built in as we move ahead. There are still some funds in the plant fund and we always have layers and small little buckets for those kinds of things because we will not let instruction suffer, and it's growing. Yes, on the facility side, there is some instruction that's suffering, and that's why we're going forth with a partial plan. They will be complete projects. They will be completely funded. We'll have all y'all's consideration for approval for that. But on the equipment side, if there's anything that the deans need, they call. And if there are gaps out there, we will hear from them, and we have plans for that.
And I'll add this too, while I'm fine with this for this year, but on the one hand, we have the governor's request that we don't increase tuition. On the other hand, we have the state not making us whole with what they promised us in terms of state funding. I also know that to raise tuition by a couple of dollars would not come close to closing the gap that we have. So I understand that. But moving forward, should there be another request that we don't increase tuition, I think we need to look at that pretty seriously because they've not just tied one hand behind our back, but
I will follow up with Senator Colcourt's office and find out those remarks because she, from what I've heard this morning, was pulling all those points together. And so we'll see what the impact of that is and how we can articulate all that, or how we need to articulate all that for next year's discussions, particularly at during the session altogether. But I think there's work before then that we can do to have a better sense of where we're headed. We can't sustain another hit, and that listing of those hits are growing.
Right.
That can't. Duly noted, and we will focus on that as part of the legislative efforts.
And you and your team have done a great job of being really mindful team players and working with the state. Yes, and obviously coming up with the funding formula and doing everything we could to play by the rules, and we have done that, and they haven't. So you know, as you said, it's not sustainable. And so this next session will be very interesting.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I agree with Libby related to us having to look at tuition. Although I've never proposed tuition increases, I think that there are some things that we got to do going forward. One of the things I do want to talk about is the $1 million that I saw in the capital funding in terms of demolition. Is that demolition to do work on the projects that are on the table for the 43 million, I'm sorry, or is that demoing buildings that we're no longer using? What is the $1 million in demolition?
It's a proposal. It's monies that are set aside for a particular building. It's a single building. It's the old administration building. Still, it's not. It's just out there for discussion. We go back and forth. We've tried to save this particular out on Windward campus. It's the old administration. It's right on the curve. It's been around forever. We have cycled and recycled the usage of that building 5 or 6 times. 3 or 4 times at least, multiple times. Davis, I don't know how many people have been out. I don't know how many iterations we've had of that building. Yeah, everybody's had an office in there. It's but it's set aside for that potential demolition. We always give it to the last. You know, I remember when we demoed Windward Hall. Excuse me, Heritage Hall. Excuse me, what am I mixing my names here? Heritage Hall out on these. We did everything we could to save that building. Remember that, Jessica? But there's just a point where the cost of it just catches up to us. We are saving all the good bones at the campus that we possibly can save. We'll bring that back. Today's not a final. That's why we're talking about it. We appreciate that. We'll give it special attention. We'll get John, if you can help us get a final assessment of that. I think you've helped us renovate that thing at least 2 times at least of the 5. Anyway.
Just my own thoughts in terms of demolition. If the $1 million is something, demolition we could put off for another year when we do, I'd much rather make sure that we have, if that equipment that we're looking to buy is going to be used for instruction, I'd much rather have the money for the equipment that we need, if we can, if the demoing those buildings is critical because of it's unsafe, or because we're going to use some of the space that's going to open up for some of the instruction, like whether it be CDL training or something like that. That's a different story. But let's just consider if that's something that's critical this year. That's the only thing I'd like.
That's a great point, and these are the kinds of things we want the feedback on. That's a great point.
Oh, one more thing. This is just general comment. Looking and being always ecstatic with the results of the success of the dual credit program and the ISDs that are reaching out to us that want to participate with our dual credit efforts. I mean, I think that's just a selling point and something to highlight to our legislators, that's saying there are needs in South Texas that ISDs way far south are asking us to help and basically help help their efforts. And so again, cutting back on some of the stuff that we're doing at the community college level to try to help our students get trained to be able to get a leg up on a dual credit and certification type programs, I think is critical for the state to come back in and help shore up our efforts. Because again, what they've done historically in the past, and we've been in South Texas have been shortchanged in terms of funding, has come down to South Texas from as against North Texas and East Texas. We've got to have we've got to continue to get relief to be able to allow us to do the mission that we're trying to do. So thank you.
Thank you. Regent Loeb and then Regent Krull.
Yeah, I want to echo what Libby and Rudy said. I think we need to, I think if they're not going to deliver on a consistent basis on what we're supposed to get paid, then we need to stop just not doing even minor tuition increases to keep up with inflation. Otherwise, we're just buying ourselves a large tax increase. You know, it doesn't help that the tax base isn't growing either. I do think we need to keep track of how much we get, I understand we ran out of money, everybody overperformed, we're going to make it up, but I think we need to track how much we get shorted overall, including how much compared to what the deal was when HB8 passed, where, we kind of have these trickle and rotating changes as to what we're getting paid for and how much. I think, we should keep track of how much we should have gotten paid under the original deal and what we've actually gotten paid. Maybe someday somebody will.
Well, there's a 400 and almost $500 million overall number of how that describes how much the community colleges overperformed. I think it's like 480 million.
Yeah,
pushing 500, and so there's that big bucket out there, and I know there's smaller, more detailed data around that, so we'll get that back too as part of the report.
And I think on the buildings, we've got Finley, Richardson, and Harvin, and then one or two others on Heritage, right?
Early childhood.
Early childhood.
We have, it's fine arts. I actually brought the list if you want me to get it. So we had put priority level 1 for all of the buildings.
You want to go ahead and get that, Tammy? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I guess my point is we are not going to put 5 buildings under construction at the same time on the same campus.
Correct.
So I think and I guess there's a question of, do you do one bond issuance and then put the cash in something where it's generating some money while we wait, or do you just wait to issue the bonds in that way? So I would just say, hone that, because there's a scenario where we do one bond issuance, have less work, pay maybe fewer fees, and it offsets the revenue because we're not going to actually spend it for a year or two.
John,
or we do 2 issuances, and I think you guys can hone down that number before next time.
John's helped us with that before. We've done that with much more than we're talking about here. But Tammy and John, can you all speak to that, please?
Right, it's, the list that we presented in June, which was our priority projects, that absolutely will come back. We'll identify, like Dr. Esme said, what have the greatest needs of all the projects, and you can't have 3 major projects going on on the same campus at the same time.
Yes,
but from the financial standpoint, yes. John, you talk about how you line that out and stretch the dollars and so forth.
We can work with Roll and our debt managers on when to issue the bonds and how much. There's always a time frame, usually like 6 months, both before and after on that, which gives us, in essence, almost a year from issuing to starting a project, so we can issue early, start a project, and then wait. And so, because there are issuance costs for different issuances, and then you have to start repaying the debt that's been issued. But we can work with Roll and our finance on what's the best route to do that. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. I just noticed that. Yes. Is like, I don't.
Yeah, the issuance cost, there's going to be, the only bad thing with this is there's going to be 2 issuance costs as opposed to 1. We're hoping, we'll see what the economy does next year, and we'll just ascertain things as it is. So that's the only thing bad about this. But as far as the bucket of 47 million proposed, there's going to be issuance costs for all of that. And so we'll factor all that in with our finance team.
Okay. My other concern is, I want to make sure that we don't damage student recruiting and wraparound services. I think those are critically important. We're doing really well on that. Thank you, everybody who works on those things. I know, the persistence numbers, how much of a challenge that's been for this college, and that's how we live or die financially, and whether we're having a community impact. And I think that summer number where several hundred more students are finishing this summer versus even last summer, I think shows what a good investment that's been. And so that may be my golden goose
we'll watch
in this
that
conversation is sure. I want to make sure that we're still doing our job.
Yes, and the momentum that wasn't in place early last year, the first half of the semester with in terms of support for wraparound services has been building, And so that momentum in terms of bringing on, expanding those services in the spring are going to carry us through the fall. There'll be a little bit of a lull because of just the overall slowdown, but in terms of recruiting and marketing, Jeff, can you speak to that on this particular item? I didn't know if this impacted yours or Patricia's area more specifically.
Both of ours a little bit, but we've been ramping up these efforts significantly, so I don't think that what is reflected in scenario one would be a deep impact at all to recruiting and marketing efforts.
Patricia, do you have any impact? Everything's still status quo that way. This was expanding and going forth, but we're going to meet the expectations of the grants that we have with the Dell Foundation and those very important expansions of wraparound services. So it's still a robust operation, and we'll keep a close eye on it because it's a golden goose for us as well.
And I have something to add when we get to the, I'm going to say the people part.
Okay, and my last thing was to Rudy's point on dual credit. You know, I've had great conversations with our delegation as we normally conceptualize it, but I think Rudy makes a very good point, is that with this expansion in dual credit, our delegation is larger. You know, I mean, I don't know who the state rep in Raymondville is, but I mean, I think we need to reframe our references and start communicating with those people at the state in those areas, because we're part of their communities and we're part of that, and we need to talk to them because it may be that they've never had a community college with a presence in their district.
We've run across them. You know, we go to functions and many times you'll get a state rep show up in Hebronville because at the high school gym something's going on. I know that's happened in Alice actually a time or two. So yes, duly noted, and we'll put it as part of our governance outreach, and we'll keep a close eye on it.
I was sitting on TxDOT and I'm like, who's Raymondville? Because they're who puts the thing up because they got to have it because whoever's going to yell at them about the highway. But yeah, I think we need to
be thinking more broadly in terms of our delegation relationships.
All right, Regent Kroll, and then we're going to move on to salaries.
A thought just came to me with our outreach into some of these remote areas like Raymondville and Hebronville and so on. We need to be careful that our expenses to serve them is covered by the revenues that we're getting.
Yes.
Because, I mean, it's almost a 2-hour drive to Raymondville to send somebody down there to teach a class.
Yeah, a lot of this is covered through distance education. Not all of it, though, because there's only so many parts of welding that you can teach that way.
Right.
And so all those factors are figured into our operations, and I think we can show that overall as we move ahead in terms of cost versus revenues. Yeah. Duly noted.
And may I add, sometimes we also have the opportunity, if they meet credentialing requirements, we can credential a high school teacher, staff member from the high schools if they meet our credentialing requirements to teach for us. So there would be no commuting.
Yeah, all kinds of things. There's all kinds of variations. But
I just need to be kind of cautious about how we keep spreading out and make sure that our revenues are covering the expenses that provide that service.
Yeah, distance education is a powerful tool for that, but not the only solution. Duly noted.
All right, so move on from this slide to our salary slide.
Yes, thank you. To move forward, of course, with our priority, I know Dr. Escamilla, this is one of his main priorities, is people first. So I want to talk to you today some about our investment in our faculty and staff. So as we mentioned before, how we're going to balance the budget, this information was presented in June, but then we've had to readjust so that we could balance the budget. So there is one difference in our scenario that we are proposing, our option that we're proposing. So I'll explain that as we go. So for the purposes of this preliminary budget, administration is recommending option number 3. Okay, so we're going to start reviewing option number 3. For our faculty, the 1-year experience pay at the current level of $829, and then we would add 3% to the schedules for rank, education, and base. This dollar amount includes the promotions that have already been approved, summer pay, that would also be affected. Adjunct overload, so we have an adjunct schedule, and we also use that same rate schedule to pay overload to full-time faculty, so we're proposing a 3% increase to that schedule. For our exempt employees, a 3% increase. Our non-exempt employees, a 3% increase. Our non-exempt part-time. This is our core part-time employees that we have year after year. It does not include work-study, student assistants that are under work-study, or our own student assistants, instructional, and grants. Instructional is because sometimes we have part-time that come in. They may come in one time and teach a skills training class for 3 weeks and they're gone. So those types, when those hires are made, it's what's the rate, going rate for the market at that time. So those would not be included in this. We also want to make sure we mention that all those full-time and part-time who meet eligibility. So for full-time and part-time, you have to be hired prior to May 1st. And for faculty to get their year of experience, I believe they have to be hired prior to October 1st. So those are the two eligibility, and then favorable performance evaluations. So that's underlying eligibility. I also want to mention that we use for faculty as a benchmark, the Texas Community College Teacher Association survey for 9-month salaries for faculty. Currently, we are ranked 8th out of 50 for average faculty salary. And I also wanted to mention that the reason we're staying with this particular scenario or this particular option, is because the current cost of living, the CPI, is at 3.5%. The projections for the remainder of the calendar year is for it to remain 3.5%. So we thought it was important to keep intact at least 3% increase and still have to balance the budget because of that. And then I believe it was mentioned earlier too about the health insurance cost is increasing by 8%. If you insure your family, that's about $52 a month, 51 and change a month more for your health insurance for family coverage. So that's why we wanted to at least stay with the option 3. The one difference between what we presented in June to now so that we could balance the budget is we did remove what we were calling the faculty load alignment, because that cost was over $1 million. So we did remove that from option 3 so that we could balance the budget.
I'd like to talk about that, if I may, Ms. McDonald. That particular piece is something that I've been trying to accomplish for the college for a long time. It's a piece that I'm going to keep on the front burner for future considerations. It's a piece that brings the equilibrium, I would say the proper way to address payment for laboratory instruction of all kinds here at the college. I want the faculty to know that we've kept it on the table till the very last minute. We're still not done. Poor Jackie has to put up with me saying, is there one more way? Is there one more way we can get this back on? And until it's done, it's not over till it's over in my mind, but it is a consideration for bringing better equity to the pay for faculty that are working extremely hard in these laboratories. Don't get me wrong, they're getting paid. Everything is okay, but there is room for improvement there, and we have got to keep looking at that. Please make a mental note of this particular part of this conversation for future conversations, because I will be bringing it back to you all, Regents.
So we'll go over in general our preliminary expense budget to do with salaries. So we always provide you with what our current budget is, and then we give you what is that difference between, or what we'll be adding, or sometimes it could be lowering in the budget. And then what we've talked before about our vacancy variance, because we're not 100% full 100% of the time with our positions, so we do allow for that in our budget. And then we'll give you the preliminary proposed budget for 27. So on faculty salaries, you'll see the almost $1.2 million. That includes, we were able to find some current capacity within the 26 budget to help cover the cost of the 3% increase. We had some positions, Jackie and Jerry and I have been scrubbing the data, I guess you could say. So we had some positions to where if you have a regular full-time faculty position budgeted, maybe someone left or someone retired. And then we had to hire a full-time term to fill in while we were recruiting for someone. Well, in some cases, we found that both positions were budgeted, so we were able to pull back. It's like we're going to use the existing faculty position to fund the term until we get it full. So we were able to find some current capacity with some of that duplication. We also went and reallocated some of our budget. If you have someone who had been here 20 years and they retired, their 9-month salary was pretty good, high up there. Well, when you bring someone in to replace them, then of course they come in at a lower rate. So we took those dollars and repurposed them. So we did some of those type of adjustments. And then on our vacancy factor, this is a snapshot in time, so this was taken in June. So we had at that particular time some extra faculty positions that were open, so that's why you're seeing that vacancy factor in a sense. Even though it's in parentheses, it's an increase in the vacancy factor. But overall, all the different vacancy factors, we currently budget for a 10% vacancy rate. That's what we budget for, is 10% overall. And like I said, this could, in 2 months, the factor could be different in all the different categories, but for that day, that's what it was. So then you'll see the overall preliminary budget for faculty. In this particular faculty line item, it's full-time faculty, tenure track, full-time terms, adjuncts, and overload pay. All of that rolls up into this one line. Okay? On exempt salaries, I'm going to tie this into exempt and even some of the non-exempt. I know you spoke earlier about making sure, and Dr. Smith, you mentioned on the wraparound services. So we have the 3% salary increase in here, but we also, this last year, we added quite a few additional positions. And those additional positions were to support those student services, the wraparound for all students, from transfer to someone to head up student recruitment, and also success coaches, advisors. So there are a lot of extra wraparound services that we did add this particular last year. And there were various areas across the college. So that's on your exempt. And then part of our exempt budget is also exempt salaries for instruction, and that would be those who do instruction that are not faculty status. So it could be your truck driver, trainers, it could be, of course, all the CE instructors under continuing education, so that's that line item. On non-exempt salaries, the same 3% increase on non-exempt, and this includes the raise, but we also added some additional positions in non-exempt, because anytime you expand in programs or expand instruction or other areas, they have to have support resources. So we did add some administrative support resources in various areas across the college. And then you have your non-exempt salary instructional. That is mostly for those who get paid, like I said, skills trainers, they get paid by the hour, so they're considered non-exempt. They get paid by the hour. It could be other types of instructions. Dr. Rivera might bring someone in to teach Excel for 6 weeks, and it's a part-time thing. So that's where those salaries would lie on that one. And then, of course, all those benefits that are associated anytime you increase salaries, your benefit costs increase. So it gives you the overall increase of faculty dollars and the total of salary and benefits.
Back to healthcare for a second. I just want to say I do not mind doing 2 different percentage increases if it avoids an issue where a lower paid employee is not given a raise sufficient to even cover the cost in healthcare. Because a flat percentage can be plenty for a higher paid employee to pay their increased healthcare premium, but not enough for a lower paid employee to even meet that. And I think we need to make sure that that's not happening. So it's just something to check every year.
Yeah, we watched it on the hourly basis, especially we've expanded those ranges. Can you talk about that, Tammy, yes, on how we mitigate against these kinds of things and increase hourly?
Yeah, over the last 3 years, but we've did some more work on it this last year, is in various departments across the college, and it's touched a lot of the functional areas. We have looked at market information, and we have readjusted, because Dr. Samia has that as part of what he can allow, is he can readjust our, what we call our rate schedules. So we have increased those rate schedules for multiple areas across the college, particularly for the hourly employees.
Give an example, a number from what to what, from 17 to 25 and things like that.
I'm going to say we probably did 14 to 19.
There you go.
And some of them could have been a couple dollars, but there were some that had a market adjustment of some significance. And like I said, those were across. We also looked at some of our support services with last year. This is an example we did last year, is we, besides doing the rate schedules, we also look at reevaluating positions. If they have more responsibilities at a higher level, then we look at those positions. Last year we did one with the support services to instruction to all the chairs, to the departmental chairs, their admin support. We looked at what their higher level administrative support person made, and we reevaluated it and upgraded, so they went up a pay grade, so that allowed some additional dollars for them. So there are different strategies we use all year long to make sure we're trying to keep up with that. Yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure, like you said that, and I did some math, and I'm like, okay, I think we're probably okay based on what I know, but I just wanted, I don't mind us doing, if you make less than this, it's X percentage. If you make more than this, it's this lower percentage. To me, that's fair. So I just wanted to let you all know that. But thank you. It seems like you're doing even better than that, so thanks. Appreciate that.
Madam Chair, Mr. President, and I think the question is for Dr. Harcum too. What is our faculty recruitment entails specifically in the high demand departments? What's our capacity to attract and keep faculty in those disciplines? I'm thinking of nursing, for example. We do have shortage of nursing faculty. And is it because we cannot offer an attractive salary, or is it shortage of faculty itself? Well, I mean, of course, this is a national crisis too. I mean, it's a statewide crisis. But what can we do in terms of faculty salaries to do our best to attract faculty in high demand fields?
Yeah, salaries are very competitive. The neighboring university offers a higher salary than what we do. That's one thing. But also there's a shortage overall, as you've already mentioned. So we do have our chair of nurse education actively recruiting everywhere that she can. And we do try to help to make that competitive, yes.
Okay.
The way our faculty salaries are set up is we have one schedule, and all faculty tenure track are paid off of that schedule based off of the different components that we talked about earlier. But we do have the ability, we do sometimes get, I know the nursing department got a grant so that it could help recruit and pay a sign-on bonus. So I know they had that last year. So that was a plus. I know in different times we have, Dr. Escamilla has approved critical needs stipends. So we do look at different options of what we can do to help make it more attractive for those critical positions, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Turner.
Yeah, with your staff meetings, are they fine with the 3%? Are they grumbling, or do they understand? How are they feeling about this? Because I know you've had those conversations with teachers and stuff.
We've only begun talking about the scenarios.
Okay.
I have a meeting with the faculty council officers in a week or so. If not this, I don't know if it's this week or next, but we'll continue to talk to them. Sorry? It's next week, yeah. So I'll be meeting with the officers next week, talking about things.
Well, I just want to
getting
make sure
more
they
feedback.
feel valued and that their voices are important.
I'll-
Because not all school districts are providing any raises this year. I'm one of them that were at zero, so.
Yeah, and we have a college-wide compensation committee, and we have a meeting Friday morning with that committee.
Yeah,
This
that's
Friday
as
morning.
part of the faculty council. And so we'll have multiple opportunities opportunities before the next meeting, and we'll certainly, they're always invited to come to the board meetings and so forth, and of course, we'll have their input for sure.
Now, Ms. Slater?
Thank you. So for our non-salary expenses, currently we are looking at reducing by 1.2 million, and then with our contingency, we're looking to increase that by 35,000, bringing our total preliminary expense budget to the 136 million. So now we're going to go over our preliminary expense budget and the details on our categories of the income statement. So for salary and benefits, as Ms. McDonald just went over, currently we are estimating a $3.6 million increase, bringing our salary and benefit budget to $99 million, which is a 4% increase from last year. In order to accommodate that state reduction, we did put that scenario 1 in here. So for supplies, postage, duplicating, and copier rentals, we are currently estimating a decrease of $150,000. For the maintenance and repairs, we're increasing that currently by $299,000, and that is to enhance safety across all campuses and also to maintain our current existing equipment. For equipment, currently that's the reduction of the 1.2 million. So we have that 650,000 in instructional equipment that we've talked about in scenario 1. And then in June, we had talked about pulling out 610,000 for computers. We have purchased computers early, so that way we could get a better price. They've been received, so we were looking at skipping a year and then adding that back into fiscal year 28 budget. Another part of our strategy for the state fund reduction is to reduce the student recruiting and marketing by $150,000, and then $94,000 from contract labor and consultants. So the reduction in the membership and dues, that is also part of that scenario 1, so reducing that by $25,000. For our insurance, we have been fortunate again to have a lower premium going into next year, so we were able to reallocate that $360,000 to other priorities. And then with the maintenance the maintenance tax notes, instead of issuing that $80,000 and issuing $43.8 million or $80 million instead, we're going to do the $43.8 million. So what we had last board meeting in June was $4.2 million there. So we've reduced that 2.3 so we can issue half, and then we're reallocating that deferred maintenance budget of $1.4 million to cover the majority of the cost of issuing that $43.8 million in maintenance tax notes.
And we'll bring you more detail as we ask for you all to consider all this at the conclusion of the budget cycle.
So with the increase in the contingency of the $35,000, our total preliminary expense budget is the $136 million, which is a 2% increase from last year. Okay. So now Dr. West will go over our M&O budget forecast.
Thank you, Jackie. First of all, I want to say that putting this forecast together is a huge team effort, and I want to thank all the groups and the team members that collaborated to give us the input, and that's Patricia's group, Sushil, Jackie, Tammy, Allie. I hope I haven't left anybody out, but it's a big effort, and everybody worked together really well in putting this together for us. Now, what we've got here is for fiscal year 27 out to 29. And of course, your first year will start out with what we're doing for the budget. So that if any of those numbers change, then of course we would change our base year. And then I'm going to go through and explain to you all the assumptions that we used in putting together the forecast. So starting out with the top line, the performance-based funding, we have used a conservative growth level there of 2%. Then the next two lines, the Aransas Center and Freedom to Dream, those numbers come in from the previous forecast that you've seen. The FAST appropriations, we've put a growth level there of 2%. And then on the insurance and retirement contribution, we just leave those numbers the same because we never know what that's going to be, so we just use the base amount. Then moving on down to tuition and fees, we have assumed an enrollment growth, very conservative growth estimate of 1%. And then again, on the tuition and fees from the Aranza Center and Freedom to Dream, those come in from the previous forecasts. On property taxes, we assume a 2% valuation growth, and we keep the tax rate flat. And then on miscellaneous, we have a small 1% growth there. And then the next slide is our expenses. Tammy gave us the numbers to put in for the expenses, and these would include a 3% raise per year there. Then the non-salary grows at a 2% rate per year. On the bond payment, what you're seeing here is what we've been talking about. Instead of doing the $80 million in maintenance tax notes for 27, we would issue approximately half of that. And the numbers that Dave Gordon ran for us, based on the interest rates at the time, and of course you guys know that fluctuates, but he could get us a project fund of about $47 million based on what he ran for us. So keep fingers crossed that we can get that much. And then what we've done here is for 28 and 29, we layered in issuing the other part of the $80 million. So that brings us down to the end of the forecast. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Nopoulos.
Thank you for the opportunity to present. Yes, Dr. Escamilla?
No worries. I just want to make sure you got your questions.
I was listening to my boss and the boss next to him. So thank you for the opportunity to present. Like we mentioned before, this is a work in progress, but we're very confident in the numbers that we present, knowing that they may change before the August 11th board meeting. And we thank you for your feedback. We know that there are questions because of the ever-evolving scenarios that we face. But regardless of that, what we do, and thanks to your leadership, is have the opportunity to plan. And then because we are successful, and not every institution has the flexibility to still show growth, especially as Dr. Turner mentioned in the increase in salaries. I remember I worked in Kentucky where the retiring state president said one of the biggest regrets that he had was to have 3 years of no cost of living adjustment across the board or wherever you call it, because it was not good for morale, and knowing that the state may have still continued to not meet what it stated. And so this is a very healthy institution, and it's thanks to the great work with the people behind me and those that are listening and the people in front of me, because one of the biggest things that you do is to not only hire the president and CEO, but also review and approve the budget. And so we continue to work on this, and we continue to, as Dr. Escamilla has talked about, and some of your recommendations, talk with our legislators. Some are in committee right now, so that by the time we present it to you, that we are very confident that this is the best that we can do with the information that we have, knowing that, as Chair Scott mentioned, we are looking more into the multi-year forecasting so that we can adjust to these different scenarios and not just rely on one or two. Thank you. Dr. Escamilla?
I wanted to thank you all for the level of work. It is so important that we understand your thought process and understand the deep dive into multiple areas of developing this budget when we have the kinds of changing scenarios that we do. I think about in 2023, it was the appraisal district and the big swings that we took in our property values, and how we had to set a tax rate according to values that we knew we wouldn't be able to collect from. And then a couple of years ago, it was our first adjustment of House Bill 8 and the outcomes-based funding and the governor's request to limit tuition. And now in 2026, we have a miscalculation on the part of the state in the second year of the biennium, and causing this 6.5% reduction in that funding, coupled with the effects of House Bill 9 and the limits or the expansion of exemptions. So not only are we asked to limit tuition, that we're not being able to receive the funding that was promised to us, but now we have property tax relief that has, that and coupled with low growth locally, we have a zero or actually slightly negative property tax valuation. Those are a lot of constraints that the staff has had to deal with over the last 3 fiscal years. And I want to applaud you for staying creative. I want to applaud you for staying positive. I want to applaud you for keeping our students first and for keeping our faculty and those folks that are on the front line with our students first and foremost. So I think you guys have done an incredible job in some extremely challenging situations over the past several years. And so I just want, again, I want to thank you for the level of detail, Dr. Escamilla and your team, for all of this. Thank you. Do we have other kind of closing comments or requests as we wrap up this workshop? A lot of information. Yes, sir, Dr.
I have just a comment. Mr. President, how did this all start, the shortfall or the miscalculation at the state level, and who is responsible for this, and how are we going to hold people accountable for a midway correction of sorts that impact everyone in the state? I mean, I just need an insight or an explanation on that. Thanks.
So are you free for lunch tomorrow? Maybe breakfast and lunch. But there are multiple approaches to the answer to answer your question. It started with, we met with Woody Hunt and Harrison, Dr. Harrison Keller, former commissioner, State Representative Gary Van Dever. Those are the members of the commission. They were at the annual meeting last week or 10 days ago or so. And we talked about that. We were celebrating Chairman Woody Hunt as per his role with HB 8. It started off with just exceeding expectations and the lack of dollars overall. So it started there, but we still have our commitment to the dynamic funding model. We have all kinds of promises and commitments and everything else, and the only thing we can do is remain cautious, yet remain optimistic for our students, because that's what our students count on. That's what our community counts on. That's what our that's what the employees count on as well. I'll give you a deep dive on all of that in my candid opinion in a coming meeting, I promise.
Excuse me. We do have a short, hopefully a short closed session. So we are going to adjourn into closed session at under Texas Government Code 551.071, consultation with legal counsel, and 551.074, personnel matters related to the evaluation of the college president. And the time is 1:36 p.m. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to come back into open session. The time is 2:26 p.m. The board has concluded in closed session our annual performance evaluation of Dr. Escamilla, and I will ask Regent Averett to please read a motion.
Thank you. Based on the board's evaluation of the college president for fiscal year 25-26, I move that the board issue a positive evaluation for Dr. Escamilla.
Second.
Thank you. The third, fourth, a fight for second. So, Dr. Escamilla, the board is very pleased once again with the level of leadership that you provide to the college district, to the team that you have put together, and the responsiveness to a myriad of opportunities and challenges over the last year. You continue to perform at a high level of integrity. The college and the community trust you, and we are just very, very happy with your performance and all that you have meant to the college and to the community. So I'll open it up for any other regents to make a comment if you so would like to. Nick? Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. Voice of Reason on the,
Yeah, Mark, we saw some difficult times on the board together, for the 18 years that we served together, and we saw some difficult board members. We saw some difficult situations, but you have rise to the occasion every time. A true leader. And, I'll always be at your back, so you inspired the board. You have a good board as a result of what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nick.
any other comments? Yes,
Madam
Dr.
Chair,
Babley.
as I was mentioning, I've been in higher education for quite a long time, more than the state of Texas and outside. And given Mark's traits in leadership in higher education, I feel very fortunate that we have him as a native son here. I've seen 4-year colleges, 6-year colleges, universities, colleges that have presidents and leadership, which I tell you, Mark is par excellence compared to anyone in the state higher education. So I'm very, very pleased and happy to applaud him and thank him for being here. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr.
All right. With no further comments by the board, is there any public comment on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed, same sign. That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all, Regents. Thank you all very much for your confidence, and it's been a good year, and I think it's been a great year, actually. And the idea is that we continue as a team to keep improving on it, and I'll give them everything I have because I know they're giving the students everything they have. And I think collectively we have the best colleges in the country. Pound for pound, we always say we fight above our weight here at the college because we compete with the very larges, and I think we surpass them in so many different areas. That's because of the team we have, and thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Escamilla. All right, so the calendar for upcoming board meetings, we have our regular board day on August 11th, and then the public hearings and adoption of the budget on August 25th. For those of you who would like to attend, convocation for the college will be on Monday the 17th in the morning, and Delia will send out a reminder with more details on that. And then our board day in September is on the 8th. We do have the state annual conference for trustees starting on the 17th. Who else going to that? Who's all going to the 17th? Great. Perfect. All right. And then in October, we have our regular board meeting, scholarship banquet, and our national annual congress. Yes, sir.
I have one last little presentation. Can you bring it up? So at our recent Texas Association of Community Colleges summer meeting, we gathered in San Antonio, and it was a CEO's only meeting except for one exception, and we celebrated the chair of our House Bill 8 committee, Mr. Woody Hunt, and so forth, and former Commissioner Harrison Keller was there. State Representative Van Dever was there. Senator Creighton was not able to be there. Those were our elected officials and Larry Taylor, also Senator Larry Taylor, and then our representative from the Valley, Oscar Longoria. They weren't able, so some of them were there, and we were celebrating. But along the way, State Representative Gary Van Dever left each commissioner a beautiful framed declaration for each one of us, and he asked that I present it to you because of your work as the lead. Would you go ahead and bring that up, please, Ms. Delia?
Oh my goodness! Oh my
goodness! As your work on, there's the whole commission. There we are.
Wow!
And this is for you, Madam Chair, and this is.
Oh my goodness!
It's signed by all the elected officials and the governor and so forth. And thank you for your work on House Bill 8, which continues to be the foundation for community colleges moving forward in Texas. Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you. You surprised me on that one. It's not often there's something on the agenda that I don't know about.
Yeah, that one. We had to bend the rules a little bit on that one.
All right, well, with that, thank you very much. Thanks for bringing that, appreciate it. We are adjourned at 2:32 PM.